Life is often so busy, taking us here, there, seemingly everywhere. When you aren't able to make it to church, we hope you are fed and nourished by listening to the preaching of God's Word wherever you are at the moment. In the meantime, take care, and God bless.
On Sundays up until Palm Sunday, we are going to be talking about being lost and being found. Now, before I get to where I plan to go, when I think of topics for a sermon series, I do a whole host of things. I think about what may be interesting, I think about what may be intriguing, I try to be creative, I Google a bit, and then I get to the point where you have to pay someone to tell you what they think, and then I go back to my own thoughts that you find people pay for. In this case, with Lost and Found, I ran a few ideas that I had by some people, and even though they were very kind to me, they weren't loving what I had pitched, so I took another swing. Now, I know that you can't wait to know why I arrived at the concept and title of Lost and Found. Well, all thanks and praise goes to Mr. Tim Graff. Not because he thought of the series. Instead, during our time together, Tim has talked about these good friends he has who are members of a band by the name of Lost and Found. They have 20 albums that they've done together, and they obviously have a good taste in friend. So without further ado, Pastor Sarah's line, let us now officially begin Lost and Found, today's topic, the lost and found sheep. To be honest, I wasn't fully triggered, but I do have to say that my memories of the lost and found department are not fond. This is not a shock to those who know me the most, but as a young child in school, I lost my gloves and hats almost on a daily basis. In fact, I recall a time when my parents had no other choice but to have the mittens that are married to your coat. You know, there's a cord that goes inside your coat. There were, however, two remaining problems. Number one, what if you lose your coat? You also lose your mittens. That was not a good day. And number two, when my parents implemented the mittens connected to the coat thing, it was unfortunately a long time after people had stopped doing such a thing, which meant I had become a loser who always loses stuff in one fell swoop. So not only did I have a problem, but I clearly looked like I had a problem. But don't worry, I'm over it. My second not so good memory of Lost and Found is that we had two kids at one time in hockey. And with all that equipment and one child of ours unnamed, in the lost department is me incarnate. It's so wonderful to walk up to this ginormous Lost and Found box, and you dig and you sift through and you touch stuff in this contaminated receptacle that's been there since Nixon. However, all that is easily forgotten when you end up finding that which was lost. The unmitigated joy that exists when you find that lost mitten, the couple $100 that you're happy about when you don't have to find hockey gloves and go someplace and buy them, and you have to go and leave school, and then you look at the awaiting car that holds your parents, and you don't have to hear one more time, you really need to be more careful. You really need to be more careful. I say nothing about the fact that you don't have to go to the clothing store until next week when you lose something else. If there's that much excitement and joy that comes with finding lost mittens or a hockey glove, how much more excitement and joy is there when you actually find a lost human being? Today's text begins with these words: the tax collectors and sinners were all coming near Jesus to hear him. Stop. The tax collectors and sinners were coming near to Jesus so they could listen to him. They sought him out so they could hear what he was saying, which seems like a good thing, yes, because wouldn't you want all people to listen and come near Jesus? Much like, ouch, my tooth hurts, maybe I should go to the dentist. You know, I have this tingling sensation in my right arm. Maybe I should go see my physician. But you see, no one liked the tax collectors. Now, it seems to me that if you pay taxes, you can probably figure out why the tax collectors were not appreciated. However, in this case, as in that day and age, tax collectors, as a general rule, made the most of their position. In other words, they unfairly raised the taxes as a way to make themselves wealthy. Any thought you may have about the current tax rate this close to tax season, and I know that this is recorded, I'm saying nothing. And the sinners. Now, I thought everyone is a sinner. Yes? Everyone's a sinner. But in this case, the word sinner was used as a code for prostitutes and career criminals. People who were, if you will, on no one's social calendar. So now that you've been given the secret decoder ring, here's the deal. We can move on to the second verse. I've only been on the first part of the first. Upon seeing the tax collectors and sinners coming toward Jesus, and then seeing that Jesus was actually warm and welcoming to them, the holy dudes, the holy rollers, the scriptural and spiritual leaders of the day murmur. And every time you murmur, it's not good. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Could be this man welcomes sinners and eats with them, or it could be this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Here's the thing about Jesus. I'm sure that Jesus had really good hearing, but also Jesus knows our own thoughts before they become our thoughts. And so whether Jesus overheard their murmurs or he just knew, Jesus responds to their shallow and judgmental and misguided and wrong and pitiful thoughts by telling them and us a little story. We call them parables. Let's say you have 100 sheep that are in your care. And if you notice that one of them is gone, what is one to do? Well, in case you're interested, here's how my Father in heaven and I roll. Every single time, we will leave the 99 so we can find the one that is lost. And you know what? When we find the one that is lost, when we find the one that is afraid or full of doubt or full of anger, full of sorrow or unbelief, I'm going to put that sheep on my shoulder and I'm going to go through the neighborhood and tell all my friends and neighbors that it's time to celebrate. In light of all that, as a mere preamble, I haven't even started yet. The timer hasn't even started. I have 3 thoughts. Point number 1, everything in the New Testament, especially when it involves Jesus, is primarily about Jesus. In other words, there are things in Scripture that are prescriptive. In other words, things that we are supposed to do. I'm telling you, live this way. I'm telling you, walk this way. I'm telling you, love this way. There are those. But everything in the New Testament where there's a story that involves Jesus and God, it's not about what we do, it's about what Jesus does and what we can do through Jesus. Capiche? Kapash. That every parable tells us what Jesus is like. That we have to realize that it's not about us being that incarnate as much as it's first beginning, that's where we receive our love and mercy. One of my favorite stories, a father and son have to go to Target. Operative words, have to. He's not very adept at it. As soon as he goes in, he says, if you're good today, you can have an icy and a pretzel and cheese. We all do it. It's called a bribe. It works. And it's going well, not well, because he doesn't know exactly how to go. Certainly is not a straight line. He has a list on his phone, meanders, but the young son can think of the icy and the pretzel with cheese and a little bit of salt, and so is stuck like glue until the toy department. Dad goes that way, son goes this way. Dad doesn't know because he's a dad. Trying to find something. The son doesn't know because, in this case, the son's in the toy department. I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. Ooh, I want that. And gets done and realizes, where's Dad? Runs up and down, runs around. Doesn't notice the toys anymore. Notices fear, loneliness, absence, big store, all alone. Falls down, finally starts to cry. Nice person comes by and says, hey, sweetie, hey, buddy, what's wrong? Wipes the tears away. My dad's lost. I can't find him. I'm scared. Well, what's your dad like? What's your dad like? Well, my dad likes football. I know that. Likes to play golf, does that a lot. He likes me, and I know he likes Mama a whole bunch. No, sweetie. What's he look like? How tall is he? What color is his hair? In order to help try to find that father, what you look like is important, but what we look like is really not important. What's really important to this young boy is, what is your dad like? What does your dad love? How does your dad roll? How does your mom roll? In every single case, in the Bible and in life, Jesus picks you, picks me, picks all his children. Always loving, always compassionate, always forgiving, never stops searching. What is your Jesus like? Loves everyone, no matter what, all the time. I'll tell you again, loves everyone, all the time, no matter what. What's your Jesus like? Loves everyone, all the time, no matter what. I will say that as long as I live, because that's what Jesus is like. And in the Bible, we see that time and time and time again. This story tells us once again what Jesus is like. Point number 2, reckless love. I put it in quotation marks because in 2018 there was a song that hit Christian radio airwaves about reckless love. Here's a sampling. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fight till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Now, I wasn't necessarily privy to it right away, but it's accurate to say that there was a certain amount of people in Christendom that took issue with the fact that these 3 people, and if you have a problem with their lyrics, don't write me, you can write them. But there were people who were petitioning to make sure that this song was no longer played because the love of God is not reckless. That God knows exactly what God is doing. That God doesn't do anything that God doesn't know about. But then I thought about the Bible and not Webster. Let's say you have a God who loves everyone, and no matter what God does, they mess it up. Perfect garden setting, and they mess it up. And then you give them another chance. And then people are enslaved by other people, and then you take the people that were enslaved, and then you free them, and then it's about a hot weekend or a month later, they mess things up, and then you forgive them and give them a new land of their own. but they worship other gods, and you give them prophets, and they listen and don't listen, and follow and don't follow, and then you have an idea. You know what? I'm going to send myself. I will send my only begotten Son, and that will solve everything. And it worked for a while. Merry Christmas. But then all of a sudden he has ministry, and then he talked about how his world was different, and then he got in the grill, the people were powerful, and all of a sudden they decided to put him on a cross. But Jesus loved so much that he allowed that sacrifice to pay for people's sinfulness. That doesn't seem very commonsensical, does it? Does that seem like a 17-year-old kid driving a car? It does. I have one. Sometimes I see him, and he doesn't know that I'm seeing him in this place called Eden Prairie. Reckless means it doesn't make sense. But if Jesus was an actual shepherd with 100 sheep, and then you notice that one of those little buggers got away. You can look on that wall over there. You can see as it goes downstairs, they have a bunch of sheep over here. And then we have one that's straggling. Carl Nelson, a member here who's very gifted. I think he designed that. I also made a little comment that to me that actually said, oh, I included you in this little art project. And by the way, you're the one at the end. I'm like, okay, I've been that my entire life. But if you have 100 sheep and you decide to leave the 99 to go after the one that's reckless. Jesus would have been put on a PIP immediately. Performance improvement plan. His supervisor was called, come here. Who's the new guy? It's Jesus. I heard it that he left the 99 to go look for the one. Yeah, who's watching the sheep? I don't know, the sheep are watching the sheep. You know there's a wolf who could come in and, yeah? And he can't work here anymore because that's reckless. How long have you been married? Does your love make sense? Are there times when you think to yourself, I can't believe I married this bloke? How long is this going to go on? And then you realize you're in love, and it doesn't make sense. Do you have children? It's a good thing we love them. Let's be honest, it's a good thing we love them. One person at a job looks us askance, and we want to go to HR. And we want that person gone. But if we love our children, they can literally run us over, and we still love them. It's reckless. It doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to make sense, and neither does faith. And to that one that's being looked for, I told you before, for a number of years, I had the privilege of serving on a task force that governed the council and the school board for Eden Prairie. We looked at the things that they were doing, and we would look at the metrics. We also tried to figure out the mission statement. If you see a van or you see some kind of school official thing where they can put it on there, inspiring each child every day. Every time I see that, I think about the 4 hours that I spent in a group with 20 other people deciding if it's going to be inspiring every child or each child. I'm not kidding. And you know my attention span. But you also know I love words. And words are important. Very, very bright people chosen by the superintendent, and we were trying to figure out each and every. And the grammarians in the room were sharpening their skills. I won't go into it too much because Wally, two of our kids' greatest English teachers ever, will correct me. but each is more individual. Every means all, but each means this person, this person, this person, this person. To that one sheep that was lost, to leave the 99 to go after the one means a lot to the one, but it also means a lot to the 99 because it's not about us. When you're found, when you have faith, when you believe, when you're in love, you want more of that goodness in other people. When something good happens to us as a child of God, we want to make sure that other people have that same feeling. In an even better story, the 99 say, well, let's span out and let's go look ourselves. But remember, this isn't about the 99. This is most of all about Jesus. And here's the thing about this Reckless song is that human beings now, especially, because we can talk about everything and we post it, people are upset about virtually everything. There's a revival. You heard about this, Asbury University in Kentucky. All of a sudden, some people started to pray. More people came. And then a revival broke out. And then more and more people were saying, well, this can't be good. What do you mean this can't be good? The reality of the situation is, as soon as you get a mass of people, something's going to go wrong. It's proven. We're going to mess it up. But I'd rather have people gather for a revival than do a whole host of other things. Yesterday, and this is a fresh part of my sermon, I went to Hopkins/Minnetonka. There's a little coffee shop I fancy over there. So I was going over there, and there's a little Baptist church. It wasn't a Lutheran church, of course. It was a Baptist church, and they had placards, and I thought, it's too cold for a car wash, so what's going on? And they had prayer revival inside. Come inside, we'll pray for you. And then I saw coffee and free mittens, and I thought I should go because our son is gonna lose his mittens. If nothing else, go for the mittens. If you're good, I'll give you an icy and a pretzel. We all do it. If I think for one moment that they're not going to pray the way that I want them to pray, or they're going to do something that isn't right, then I think I'm right. Then I think the only thing that can be done is the way I do things. Sound familiar? The love of Jesus is reckless, purposeful, but really, considering our track record, we're not a good bet. But he loves us anyway. And sometimes we're the 99, and let's be honest, before I leave this point, sometimes you and me are the one. We may not be way over here, we may be here, but it leads to point number 3. We may judge or think we don't need it or don't need the shepherd. Point number 3, those who are met with mercy are merciful. Since I am old in this and been around a long time, I really do believe that those who realize that they're loved by Christ are more loving. Those who are forgiven by Christ are more forgiving. Those who know that they are in need of God's mercy are more merciful. How do I know that? Well, I also know family systems. I know that if you weren't held enough or you were held too much, there's some jagged edges, and maybe we got to spend a little more time in therapy. Because we love how we've been loved. We're forgiven how we've been forgiven. Those who are met with mercy are merciful. This week I was thinking about my late Uncle Eric. It's weird how when you preach and you see a text, and I've never seen Eric in this text, but I've never really been this granular about the lost sheep and lost and found. I have to give you a little bit of a context. So my grandmother Adeline and her husband Hans had 3 boys, and they lived in Winnipeg. And when my dad was 18 years old, his father Hans was going to leave the farm in Winnipeg and go be the head of the University of Minnesota Farm School. And before he could take that post at the age of 54, he died of a heart attack and left Adeline with 3 kids, 18-year-old and a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and she had to raise them, and she did a great job. Now my father, Nels, is the oldest, and then there's Hans, who's still a pastor in Maynard, Texas. He's 82 years old, and he preaches every week. And then there was Eric. He was the youngest. I think it's accurate. It's not bragging. It's just the way it is that Hans and my dad, they're smart. They're Mensa smart. Their IQs are seriously weird. And I say that because the tale is that Eric, even being the youngest, he was actually the brightest at a certain age of the 3 kids, but when he was 8 years old, he got a temperature of 105, and because it took a while to go in the roads, there was some brain damage, and he had to learn to walk and talk again. And so some of that was never recovered. Follow? So you have Nels, who went to Luther College and Luther Seminary. You have his brother, Hans, who went to St. Olaf and then went to Luther Seminary. My Uncle Hans, I said this before, Toastmasters, they don't make toast. They actually speak. They have contests. Hans, my uncle, got second, not in the state, not in the nation, but in the world. In the world. And Eric was always different. It was, oh, Nels, oh, Hans, oh, Eric. Oh, Eric. And I think Hans and my dad and Adeline, his mom, did a good job. But I also know that it was hard for Eric because of the shining stars. Follow? So when Eric died, he made me the executor of his will. The reason why is that Eric and I got along. Eric was not very conversational. He talked, but you could tell that it was hard for him to speak. This week I thought, why did I cotton to Eric? Is it because I'm a nice guy? No. Is it because I'm a saint? No. Is it because I know what it's like to be Eric in the fact that my brother John got straight A's all the way through high school, aced his ACT, and I barely got into college? You picking up what I'm laying down? When you see yourself in somebody else, because we are navel gazers, when you see yourself in someone else, you have more empathy, you have more compassion. Where am I going with this? When you realize that you have been found, when you know that you at times are lost, when you and I know that we need the shepherd to come and get us and save us and mend us and forgive us and restore us, the other people who are lost at that time don't seem odd. It seems oddly familiar. Those who are met with mercy are merciful. Sometimes you're one of the 99, and sometimes you're the one that's lost. Sometimes I'm one of the 99, and sometimes I'm the one who got astray. This is just the beginning. And if you want to know what Jesus is like, show up every single Sunday thereafter. Because every single time, Jesus is not speaking about you, not about me, but speaking to you and to me. Have a good week. Lost sheep, lost, found, all the days of our life. Thanks be to God. Amen.
We hope you found this week's message helpful as you think about how you will live out your faith each day. If you would like to support the ministries at St. Andrew Lutheran Church, you can do so by having your credit card information available and then texting a gift to 952-260-9007. Thank you, and God bless.